All right, today's video, we're going to recruit our new AMG certified instructor. This is Nick Duffy. He's going to share with us how he helps his students become really wedge masters inside of that range from, what'd you say, 100 to 30 yards, somewhere in there?
Yeah, right in that yardage, just trying to dial in those numbers.
Getting those scoring clubs working in your favor so you can convert more birdies, right? Save more pars. And then we're going to show you the mechanics behind these shots, how you want to practice them, and then most importantly, how you want to take them to the golf course. All right, so Nick's going to walk us through the mechanics that not only he likes to see, but what we cover in our short game system on AMG Plus. So Nick, let's first talk about what we're trying to accomplish here.
So a big thing we're trying to accomplish is find out how far the ball will go when we go to certain positions in our swing. What I like to use with most of my players is hip to hip, rib to rib, so it'll be that 9 o'clock look,
okay,
and then shoulder to shoulder, so that 3/4 feel.
Okay, real simple, right? That idea has been around forever.
Yeah,
now
exactly.
It's the executing it, how to do it, is where golfers usually wind up in trouble.
Yes, I see a lot of times people think, oh, I'm just making a half back swing, and they're going full back, and then stopping right on impact, trying to decel into the ball to get it to go the right distance.
That's a great point, because whenever our feels are always late, right? Our feels happen after the motion happens in the golf swing. It happens so fast. So if we feel I'm stopping here, there's that delay, right? And it winds up here. So you almost got to anticipate where you want to go and then practice it. That's the main thing, is get the feedback to accomplish it.
Yeah, and like we always say, start slow.
Right.
Make sure you don't try to go full speed trying to do it at the start, because I always feel like people always try to dial in too much and they have that little bit of runoff whenever they think they're stopping.
Exactly. And you don't have to be militant about it, right?
Yeah.
You just have to be consistent about it. And to be consistent about it, you want to practice it in the correct way.
Exactly.
So let's talk about getting to those spots in the backswing. That kind of, would you say hip high, chest high?
Hip high, chest high, shoulder high.
All right, so let's go through the mechanics of each of those.
So start with just a pretty much like neutral ball position. Stance kind of narrowish. We don't want to go too wide. Pretty much right in the middle of our stance here. We feel where our hands are actually traveling. Don't get the club head mixed up in that, because what I see also as well on the range tee, you'll see guys who are thinking, yeah, I'm going only halfway back, but they're only getting here with the head, right? They're getting here with the head and the hands. So you'll see.
It's a power producer.
Exactly.
Right.
So they're actually kind of doing something a little bit different than they're actually intending on. So when we're talking about the system here, it's more like, hands to hip, hands to shoulder, or hands to, rib. Whatever you want to mean.
Then would you say that the wrist set just happens gradually or naturally? You don't try not to set it, and then you don't try to set it.
Exactly. Yeah, I see people either try to overdo the wrist hinge or underdo it.
Right.
And both lead to some very big inconsistencies amongst players.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think that's easy to visualize. So you're basically taking the hands to these spots.
Exactly.
So what we see in lessons is what will cause trouble is when there's too much tilt, right, for wedge shots, or when there's too much lowering.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So typically what I like to see is just kind of a pretty neutral, setup, and as I go into motion, where you kind of would just flow into that position, not trying to step too much off of it or try to stay too far forward.
Because again, those are power moves.
Exactly.
Right? We see it all the time on force plates. You pretty much keep the weight forward throughout the whole of these swings, because you don't have time to move it all around.
Exactly. You don't have enough time to time it up, and the shots are normally pretty precise shots. So you're trying not to hit with a ton of speed.
Exactly.
So if you're doing that, you don't have time to make that change or that little save move. You can maybe do full swing.
Exactly. So like for a 60-yard shot, let's say, 60 miles an hour is a good speed to really own.
Exactly.
Right? So you add all these speed elements to it, then you got to take them away in the downswing, and that's where we see a lot of shots go off the rails, right?
Yes. Yeah, blades, chunks, whatever it may be.
Let's talk about now the opposite side. So coming through the ball, where do we want to see the hands?
Just for the sake of the simplicity of the system, on the way through, we want to see them kind of coming hip to start, rib, or shoulder, kind of depending on the length of swing you're making. So we kind of start with 3 of the numbers, or 3 of the positions, and then kind of you can branch off from there. And
that'll have a big control for the trajectory of the shot as well.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
So great players you see, they all typically talk about hit my irons high, long irons high, wedges low. Right? So you control trajectory to control spin in a lot of cases, or distance actually.
Yeah, I definitely see players who have trouble with the low point, have trouble with the launch on their wedges way too high, even kind of smashing it a little bit too much or too little, and they have no control over where they're finishing.
Right. So the great thing about these shots is that they're easy to do. Like the mechanics of it is pretty simple. Everyone, no matter if you're 5 years old or 95 years old, can make a backswing with not a lot of speed, right? This is one area where we don't want a lot of speed.
Yeah.
All right, now let's come back and talk about how to practice these.
Okay.
We're here at Athletic Motion Golf Club, Winter Garden, Florida, one of our 8 TrackMan bays. We've got a wedge range set up here. So how are we going to practice these distance wedges?
So what I always like my players to do is first, you get a face-on camera ready to go, so you know exactly how far back you're going. Then you're going to get all your clubs that you're going to use for the different yardages. Get them ready to go with your spreadsheet. You got to have somewhere to put these numbers down, or it can get very confusing.
All right, perfect. So what do you want to start with here?
I would like to start with like the lower lofted one. So the higher lofted one. So go like the 60-degree first.
Perfect.
Start with kind of the shorter shot first. So we're just going to go right into the little hip to hip. Find out exactly how far you hit it with the hip to hip. And the goal here is not trying to hit a yardage up front. It's going to be trying to make sure I hit the positions first.
Perfect.
So I go hip to hip. I'd hit anywhere from 5 to 10 of them based upon how much time you have. If you have more time, the more shots better. You kind of scrap the ones that are kind of poor shots, or just miss hits, or ones that didn't hit your spot.
So basically you're trying to dial in that first level of swing, which is hip to hip. Once you've hit some shots there, now you're going to move on to what?
Move on to rib to rib.
Okay.
So once you get a good amount of shots, you can kind of scrap the bad ones, keep the good ones.
So there's his rib to rib. So you would hit a handful of those, maybe 10, 15 shots, try to get the average of the good shots, right?
Yep.
And talk to us a minute about how important it is to hit the sweet spot on these shots.
So that's pretty important too. Make sure you're hitting the sweet spot. Make sure they're actually like solid shots. You're not hitting like crazy shut face hooks or hitting little wipes, because that's going to really affect the distance on these as well. So hitting the center of the face, making sure the swing is actually a decent plane will actually help out as well.
So we've got waist to waist. We've got a number for that, with the 60 degree. We've got rib to rib. We've got a number for that. Now, what's the third level of swing?
Third one I like to use shoulder to shoulder.
Okay. All right, Nick, hit a nice solid shot, shoulder to shoulder. We hit 10 to 15 of those.
Yep.
Get our solid shot kind of average. And then what do we do with these numbers once we kind of get them dialed in?
Yeah, once you kind of get a good average, figure out what you want there, then we put them into our spreadsheet. So, we already have a good little Google spreadsheet ready to go. That way you could have them with you at all times. I like to have it on my phone. It's just so easy. That way it's like as you go, as you practice this, you keep have a running tablet of it. So, 1 week it may be changing a little bit. So it's nice to actually be able to dial these in when you practice.
And I know with my own game, I found over the years I'd have my favorite yardages with my favorite wedge.
Exactly.
It almost feels like once you get good at those shots, you can do them like blindfolded, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the key, is figuring out where there may be some overlap on them.
That dials in the mechanics of it. Next, we're going to look at how to take it to the course.
All right, Nick, now it's time to actually take what we've learned in practice, what you and Shaun just showed, and now take it to actual game type situations. And if you've got a launch monitor, we use the TrackMan here at AMGC. If you've got a simulator at home, or if you've got access to towels, we can go on Amazon and get those little soccer cones. Anything to give you feedback for the distance is critical for actually learning to take this to the golf course.
Exactly, yes. I like my players, if I'm training with them in person, to use TrackMan, just set up a test, random yardages, kind of get them used to being able to change on the fly, and use their matrix to look at the yardages to be able to figure out, okay, this is 56, this is when I hit this shot. I would say when you're on your own on the range and you just have towels in the field, it's good to be able to kind of randomize it yourself, or even start short to long, long to short. Mix that up a little bit, because on the golf course, there's no rhyme or reason to what you're going to get.
Right, and none of us grew up with TrackMan. It's a fairly recent technology. I can remember just carrying towels in my golf bag, and on the course, I would not tee off and go to just walk straight to the green complex and pace off 10-yard increments and hit a few on that hole, pick up the towels, go to the next hole. So there's a lot of ways to work on this without having the technology if you don't have access to it.
Yeah, and that makes it way easier when you're trying to dial this in for the golf course.
Right. All right, so we've set up a wedge test here in TrackMan. We've kind of did an abbreviation version of it.
Exactly.
So tell us what we're doing here.
Yeah, so it's just 3 shots. It's going to actually give me a score based upon how well I did, picking my yardages and being able to kind of hit them. I say when you're in person trying to do it, try to keep your proximity as tight as possible. You can even look at PGA Tour averages from the yardages, try to get a good idea how to kind of
It's a good target to strive for.
Yeah,
right?
Was it 5% typically is what the PGA Tour miss is?
So let's go. We got 3 distances set up. What are we doing? 3 at each distance?
Just doing 1 at each
Okay,
distance.
perfect.
Yeah, just 1 to hit them all kind of quickly
All right.
for the abbreviated video.
Let's do it. We got a 35-yarder. What are you hitting here?
I'm hitting a 60. Probably going to be my little hip-to-hip 60.
Let's try to do that. Okay, good contact.
Ooh, 17, a little off.
17. So we got to brush up on that one.
Yep.
That's why you're going to hit more than 1 at these.
Exactly.
Right? In practice, but this is more gamified because you don't get the mulligans, most of us, on the golf course.
Exactly, and that's where the pressure kind of comes, recreating the pressure of as you're watching this thing go through and what your handicap ends up being towards the end. adds a little bit of the golf course feeling, right?
Exactly, right? There's consequences to our shots. And the first time you do this, don't attach emotion to it. Just say, okay, this is where I'm starting from, and let's try to get better.
Exactly. Try to get those 1% gains.
That's exactly right. All right, 52-yarder.
All right, it should be my little 9 o'clock or, rib to rib. All right, 41.
Good.
Definitely need to practice that one.
Okay, yep. It's not easy doing this, is it?
No.
Especially with 3 cameras on you.
Yeah.
Right, you're going to have buddies watching you practice, right? This is taking it to the golf course.
Exactly.
This is what you want to feel, these nerves, as you're going through this. This is excellent. All right, let's go 49-yarder.
Should be pretty similar one here. I know it's going to add maybe a little bit more speed to it there. There you go.
Okay, good. All right, so we know what to work on, right?
Yes.
And that's exactly all we're trying to do is we want the feedback so you know what to practice. If you know what to practice, hopefully now you know how to practice it, then it's just a matter of repeating that process.
Yeah. The beauty of this and kind of dialing in and keeping track of it is that you can go back and look and say, man, I was really good at the 30, really good at the 40. I'm really bad at 50.
Right.
So I got to really work on that.
Or when I'm laying up in a par 5, don't lay up to 50.
Exactly.
Right? Push it up there to 30 or 40 or lay back whatever. But you'll start to learn way more about your game when you have feedback, when you practice. Introduce these mechanics to your short game shot if you have trouble. If it's not a strength to your game, practice them correctly like we've shown in this video, and then put yourself under some pressure so you can actually start to kind of forge that iron, forge these tools you have in your toolbox so you can actually score better.
So if you want to get that spreadsheet that Nick's talking about, his wedge matrix, in the first pinned comment there's going to be a link. Click on that, put in your email, we'll send it to you right away so you can start putting your numbers into the spreadsheet so you can own your game inside of 100 yards.